Welcome to the Clifton Worley Show. This week we have Cole Duke. Hey, Cole.
How's it going, Clifton?
Man, it's going wonderful. I'm really glad to be able to record with you, and this is our second attempt.
Yeah.
We talked for over 2 hours last time, and I didn't record a bit of it.
Hey, but it was fun.
Yes, it was fun, and I think that this is going to go a lot smoother now. So we covered a lot of territory.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, most of our listeners are going to know who you are, Cole, but just for the rare reason, Cole is a podcaster as well.
Yeah.
With the infamous Gear Slum.
That's it. Yeah, we just hit our 1 year anniversary.
Yeah. How's that? What is it like a year after doing podcasting?
I don't know. It's weird. There's like certain things that you have to take seriously that you kind of never thought you would. Just like, I don't know, like ordering shirts and stuff. You have to think about like, oh, how are we going to ship these? And,
Yeah.
There's just different, like when we started the podcast, it was kind of just on a whim. And I don't think any of us necessarily thought we'd still be doing it a year later. So it's interesting, but you have to, like, when you've done it for this long, you essentially, well, not that it's that long, but after a certain point, you kind of have to decide like, okay, we're either going to stop doing this or we're going to start taking it more seriously over time,
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, when you put a year into it, I'm sure you want to know that there's a reason you're doing it, and you want it done well and as best as you can,
Yeah, like you kind of, I don't know, used to, like at first, our first few episodes sound like total garbage, and just the longer you do it, you start to think like, well, if I've spent however many hundreds of hours doing this, we should at least try to make it sound good, or we should at least, just different things like that.
Yeah. So that's that's describe a little bit what it was like in those early days, and why you did it.
So we kind of like, Aaron had this radio show that none of us knew about. It started off as like a Facebook group chat between the three of us, me, Aaron, and Phil, and two other guys, and Brian Schultz and Kyle Smith. And Aaron one day, and we would just chat, it seemed like every day, just about random stuff or about stuff that happened in the Facebook groups. And one day he just mentioned, hey, I have this radio show that I do, like a legit actual radio show. And we're like, oh, send us a link so we can listen. And me and Phil listened to it while he was doing it, and he gave us a shout out, and we're like freaking out, And then right as he was doing that, I was like, we need to do a podcast, and kind of, again, just on a whim. And then Aaron had the idea of making it a fan podcast of 60 Cycle Hum. So that's, and then we recorded our first episode like a day or two later, which is kind of crazy, but basically that's what it was for the first 12 episodes or so. We'd go back and listen to our episode 1, we listened to episode 1 of 60 Cycle Hum and kind of recapped it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a few episodes, we basically, probably after 5 or 6 episodes, we realized like, hey, we actually enjoy doing this. And if we are going to do it for longer than, a couple of weeks, we need to make it not just a fan podcast and make it our own thing,
Yeah.
So yeah, then that's when we became Gear Slum.
Well, that the interesting thing about that is like it was kind of birthed out of the 60 Cycle Hum community, in the Facebook group and all the interactions there, and then you guys turned around, and not too long after you named it the Gear Slum. Mm-hmm. You had the Facebook group mm-hmm. that really has a life of its own.
Yeah, it's kind of, and it's grown quite a bit. You know, it's been around for, I guess, about a year, and we have like 350 members or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I mean, it's grown a lot. But yeah, I feel like it's a fun group. It's a pretty like safe group. Nobody's like mean to each other, and everyone like we all have different sort of levels of gear. There's no like gear shaming or anything like that. And you know, you have guys like Jamie Davis who like is a an admitted like PRS fanboy. You know, he's got like these super high end guitars and a Helix. And then you've got, you know, other guys just playing whatever their, you know, kind of entry level stuff, and everyone's kind of everyone gets along and is able to talk gear and talk about nonsense and everything. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. And the show really, I mean, it's a little bit about gear, but it's kind of like comedy about gear.
Yeah, we kind of go through phases. I mean, we like for the last few months, I hadn't really been that into gear. I got a new job, and I kind of was really focused on that, and I was traveling a lot, which meant I wasn't doing a lot of flipping just because I wasn't local. Like I wasn't getting any local deals, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently I, you know, swapped out a bunch of pedals and sort of went through another phase. And we all three of us kind of go through these phases of caring about gear a lot and caring about gear not very much. And so that's kind of reflected in the podcast, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it goes anywhere from, you know, discussing a pedal and all its options to the essence of a breakfast burrito.
Oh man, don't even bring that up. That's still such a point of contention between all of us. But yeah, it is fun, and I feel like we at least like all three of us have a lot of background with gear and understand it pretty well, and so it's not like we're just speaking from a place of ignorance, but we also get into some pretty nonsensical stuff. I was just editing this week's episode, and yeah, it's we spend quite a bit of time talking about gear, and then we talk about you know, Patrick Swayze movies and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah. I remember Aaron talking about his Mighty Ducks thing, and
oh yeah,
and it's like
tons of
I had to go back and like I think I got pulled them up on Netflix or Hulu and tried to watch those.
yeah.
So it's really it's a pretty good pop culture podcast too. You know, there's like
and and honestly, that's like I don't have nearly as much. Like Aaron and I have pretty similar musical backgrounds, and sometimes when we talk about, you know, like crappy '90s punk bands, Phil doesn't like he doesn't relate to that as much. But I don't relate to a lot of the movie references. I'll be honest. I don't. You'll notice a lot of times when they're talking about movies, I just don't have that much experience with movies as much as they
yeah,
do. You
yeah,
know? So I'm kind of the quiet one during those conversations a lot of times.
yeah. I know Phil's like a beast at movie references.
Oh yeah, totally. He's one of those. He knows all the actors and actresses' names and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I listened to this last week's episode, and this was I'm just as a preface for the next point I'm going into, but this is the first time I was actually able to listen to it like almost immediately after it dropped, because I got in my car at 2 o'clock in the morning.
oh
I
yeah.
drove to Tennessee to
Oh
go to Summer
geez.
NAMM.
Oh
And
yeah, that's right.
yeah, and so I listened to it, and it lasted me almost all the way out, getting outside of Mississippi. So
Oh nice.
yeah, and then on the way back, I listened to it again going through Alabama. So
Uh-huh.
so that
Yeah,
helped the trip.
that was the one where we recorded basically in the middle of the night, and I made the mistake of going to sleep for like an hour before we recorded just so I could get some sleep. But then when I woke back up, I was just, you know, out of it.
Yeah,
And then we did an interview with Tyler and didn't even record it, so I had to go back later and record a separate one with him. And yeah, it was a whole mess. So hopefully it was still entertaining.
yeah, it was really good, and of course I just you know look forward to it every week. But so I saw a turning point in your podcast when you guys went to Winter NAMM out in Anaheim.
Uh-huh.
It seemed like it was a thing, and then it was like, okay, Gear Slum, you guys, it kind of like solidified you, and
Yeah, a little bit. And actually, my wife made the comment, because I like in real life, I don't really tell anyone about the podcast,
mm-hmm,
just because it's, I don't know, like how many people have ever told you, "Oh, I have a podcast," and your immediate reaction is always just to roll your eyes, basically.
yeah,
And so I try to avoid that. But she made the comment that, like, well, if you're going to start, because I bought a plane ticket and we reserved, we had a room, we booked a room and everything, so we're investing actual money more so than just like the measly Podbean fees and stuff like that.
mm-hmm,
And she made the comment that, like you're actually going to have to start like telling people about this, or at least not pretending like it's not a real thing, because
yeah,
now you're spending money and actual time, and like I think in a lot of ways, and I don't know if it was the same way for Phil and Aaron, but that's kind of when it became a real thing, where it was like, okay, now this is the type of thing, and I've joked about this with them before, that it's kind of like a marriage in a good and bad ways, where we can be pretty ruthless to each other sometimes, and we can get away with it partially because we know that, like, well, if the other person just wanted to stop being friends completely, there would be like this extra piece that they would have to get out of that makes it harder to
mm-hmm,
just like cut ties completely. And it's a totally cynical way of looking at it. But yeah, it kind of just solidifies it even more that, like, okay, this is like actual, these are actual people that I know now and hang out with, and this is a real thing now.
yeah, yeah. Well, what what when you went to NAMM, was it what you expected?
Not really. Well, and Nam was kind of wild, because the first day we got there, we basically spent all day just driving to go pick up Aaron, because he had his accident just a few weeks before
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
And so he couldn't drive, and his wife, understandably so, was kind of nervous about him going at all, because he was still like on some pretty serious drugs. He still had like, stitches, and like he couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair on crutches, and even on he couldn't even really be on crutches for long periods of time, just because he couldn't put any weight on his leg, and it was kind of a whole deal. So we went and picked him up, um, and like that just was the entire first day. Um, so it was a lot of fun. I mean, meeting Phil and Aaron was about like I thought it'd be. We already knew each other so well. Um, it was weird to me every time somebody recognized us, which didn't happen all that often. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I was surprised that people were as cool as they were. Um, like Doug Cower took, like I went to his booth, and he took a lot of time just talking to me about whatever. And in the back of my mind, I pictured him. I pictured anyone sort of his status being the type of person that, like when you're at a party and the person's just looking around for a more important person to talk to than you.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't like that at all. And so I thought that was really cool. And I'd say the same thing about a lot of the people that I met there. And then meeting people like Kevin Equitz, who like is a legitimate, amazing guitar builder. And he was actually a fan of the podcast, and was like referencing episodes and stuff like that. And that was pretty mind blowing.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, he has actual talent and skill, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
to offer to the world.
yeah.
So, so no, but I mean, from a logistical standpoint, it's probably similar. I go to a lot of trade shows for work, and so I was sort of like the scope of it wasn't surprising to me at all. But I guess the bigger thing that was surprising was just how cool everyone was, and how nobody was really like trying to big time anyone else or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the, I would say like at Summer NAMM. Now I know it was a good bit smaller. I just don't. Somebody said they thought that Winter NAMM was probably like even maybe 10 times the size.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't have a good idea of how big Summer NAMM, because you don't really get an idea from pictures because it's only ever of like one booth, or
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like a little small part of it.
But I know that I could easily walk the floor in like an hour, hour and a half, and kind of glaze over everything. But the thing that kept happening was like every time I would walk through, I would meet somebody new, run into somebody else, and so there was plenty of times. It's kind of like, oh, I'm tired of doing this for right now. I'd kind of take a break, come back, but there was always something else to find. You know,
That's cool.
yeah.
What was
Something.
the most like? What was some of the most surprising stuff you saw at NAMM?
Well, um, I'll just name a few. One was, I think Horizon had a booth, and they had like some direct boxes and stuff,
Okay.
and they had this new product that it's not even out yet, that it's like a in-ear transmitter deal,
Oh, nice.
and it plugs into the back of your board. So like they've got their basic, like their version of like what Shure has, like the PSMs.
Uh huh.
But like they were gonna price these at like $300. Okay.
Including the wireless aspect of it.
Yeah, the wireless thing, and
Oh,
then like you could buy it could power like several packs, so you could buy the little receiver for 150. So you could
yeah,
outfit
yeah,
a whole band for like considerably less.
yeah, yeah. That's
And
awesome.
it seemed like you know they've got a good reputation in the industry. Like they could pull something off like this and do it well, and they've got the distribution to do it. And, I think it's a win for them. So that caught my
Yeah, that's
eye.
awesome. I mean, if it works for sure, that could be
Yeah,
a
yeah. If it worked,
game changer. Because that's, I mean, and I don't know, like, I don't know. I'm in a crappy like rock band that plays at bars and stuff like that, so I don't. Um, it seems like in-ear monitoring is a huge deal in the praise and worship
yeah,
world,
yeah,
and it's not really in my world. But that's because you know, I kind of have. I only see what I see.
right. Yeah, but I saw that as interesting, and I got to check out the $99 Epiphone SLs.
Oh, nice. What did you think about those?
Well, I thought the finishes were absolutely beautiful.
Oh,
Like,
really?
yeah, like I mean, it was well done, and the colors, had like the baby blue, like a TV yellow. I think they had a cherry
Yeah, it's
sunburst.
kind of a lot of. It seemed like it was a lot of kind of surf type colors too, like
Yeah,
kind of pastel colors.
yeah, and the sunburst was really cool. They had two different ones. I think like a tobacco sunburst and a cherry.
Was it like a thin? Was it like super glossy, or was it kind of a matte finish?
It was kind of matte.
Because I had an M2. I sold it just a couple weeks ago, but that was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was kind of the Gibson version of that Epiphone. Is
Hmm.
that fair to say? I mean, it's
Yeah, I would think so.
super entry level, and the finish was kind of this matte finish, but it was really thin too. So like you could see a little bit of the wood grain, not like physically see it, but you could see the texture of the wood a little bit. Is that kind of how those were?
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it had a pretty good bridge on it. The tuners were about
I think the bridge is
average entry
probably the
level.
same as the one
Yeah,
on the M2. It's like that wraparound, but it has
yeah, yeah.
saddles for each
Hmm.
string. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's see what else. They had like single coil pickups, like they look kind of like a Strat pickup, but maybe like a little bit thinner. And the pickguard was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
they've done a Gibson did a guitar with pickups, like they did a Melody Maker.
Okay.
I've seen a Gibson model before that has those. Yeah, they kind of look like a thinner Strat pickup,
Mm-hmm.
but it still has all like the you can see the pull pieces and stuff, right? Like on a Strat.
Yeah, yeah, and I say the only negative thing is like it was set up with extremely small strings, and I'm not used to
Oh,
playing like a small
interesting.
gauge string. It was like probably like a 9,
Okay.
maybe less. And what I found is when I was playing up and down the neck, like I would do like a quick, like run from the bottom up to the top or whatever.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like when I bent the strings, like it was kind of catching on the frets a little bit,
Oh yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
kind of like squeaking a little bit.
Totally, yeah.
And that was kind of like, okay, this is still a cheap guitar, but I think it could be
That
worked out.
that's one thing that like once you've played, and I actually sold the neck that had stainless steel frets in it. But once you play a guitar with stainless steel frets, you notice that a lot more too, because stainless steel frets don't get any kind of corrosion on them or anything, and
Mm-hmm.
so they never. Because any guitar will get that if you let it, if it's
Mm-hmm.
if you let it get all grody or whatever, it starts to get kind of build up, and you can kind of hear the string scratching across it. But that could be an indicator of cheaper fret material or something like that. Because I mean, they got to be saving money everywhere
Somewhere.
they can, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Because I mean, 100, but like, like it's still a functioning guitar. That's the thing that's crazy to me. Like it's like they still have to make a guitar that works, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they're able to make any money selling it for $100 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling Ryan, we both played it, and I was telling him that if I would have had like that as my first guitar, I could have definitely been, better off than the one that had the strings up high off the neck,
Yeah, like you would have been totally happy with it. You would have played it, played it till it wore out, type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it would be a great first guitar. Uh, Two, it'd be a fun project guitar, if you really wanted to.
Is it just like a maple neck?
Um,
Do you remember?
I want to say that it was a dark fretboard, so it could
What was it called?
the
But like the neck,
SL.
the neck itself, though. It was a
Uh,
bolt-on neck, right?
yeah, it was bolt on. I can't remember what it was.
I
A
wonder
dark.
the M2 was a maple neck. Yeah, so it's like a rosewood fretboard, but then
Okay, okay.
it was a maple neck with like a pretty thin finish, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's what it was.
but yeah, it was. But yeah, I felt the same way about them too. It was like a very playable, functional. Oh, actually, look, it looks like. So I'm looking at pictures online, and the neck's actually painted like to match the body. So that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So for $99, I mean, I think it's worth it.
I mean, how can it not? Like,
Yeah.
as long as it actually plays notes and makes sound,
Yeah.
like, how can it not be
I
worth a
think it's
hundred
gonna
bucks?
hold
You
its
know?
value pretty well, and
And even if it doesn't, like, you
yeah.
think about, I don't know, you think about a guitar losing 40 or 50% of its value. Like, if it loses, that's $40 or $50. Who
Absolutely.
it's not a
Yeah.
bad. And actually, I'm looking at the bridge. The bridge, it looks a little bit more like the one I have on my Gibson on the Les Paul Junior, which just has little like ridges for
Mm-hmm.
intonation for each string. It doesn't have like individual saddles,
Right.
which I actually like the bridge on this SL better than the M2. Well, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a bad guitar at all, and I wouldn't bat an eye for. If somebody's like, hey, what I want, should I get my kid for Christmas or something like that to get them started? I wouldn't bat an
Yeah.
eye recommending that
Totally.
one.
Huh. That's awesome.
Another one, and I'm familiar with this, but I saw there was an acoustic line there, the Saga guitars.
Okay.
They've got Blue Ridge and Bristol underneath their umbrella.
Okay. I've heard of Blue Ridge.
Yeah, and they make pretty solid guitars in the budget range.
Uh-huh.
that they're kind of like they kind of go after like the classic Dreadnought or like Triple O Martin. Sometimes like
Yeah,
some
yeah.
Gibson style like slope shoulder
Okay.
shapes, and for a couple $100 you can get into a really classic looking guitar that plays well. It's a good. It would be a really great starter intermediate acoustic.
And it would let you like I'm this way with electric guitars, but especially with acoustic guitars, like different body shapes can make a big difference,
Sure.
for playability and comfort and everything. And yeah, being able to try a couple different cool, because I don't know, it seems like like a lot of the entry level, I mean, most entry level guitars that you see are just like dreadnoughts,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like a grand auditorium type thing, but it's like the fact that they have some triple O models. I mean, that's why like I don't know if you are familiar with that Ed Sheeran guitar.
Yeah, the Martin one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was like super popular. And I think part of that's just because Ed Sheeran is super popular, but I think part of it is because unless it was like a baby Taylor or something like that, there weren't a ton of options in sort of that entry level range for kind of parlor size or double O or triple O type size.
Exactly. And I didn't get to play any of them. However, I played them before. But
Uh
they
huh.
had the oh gosh, who makes the Dirty 30s
Oh,
guitars? Those are really great
just
budget.
the
Like if you want that old like Sears type,
oh yeah, Recording King. I just
yeah,
looked it up.
Recording King. That's it.
Yeah, totally.
And those are uber cheap, and you can set them up pretty nice. I know I had one time where I took and I was able to like just turn the truss rod like one turn, and everything fell in place where it needed to be.
Interesting. Yeah,
Great, yeah.
that's the harder thing with acoustics is that it's easier for them to be like jacked up to a point of not being playable, more
Mm-hmm.
so more so than with electrics.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually more ways to adjust on electric, I think, than an
Exactly.
acoustic. So if you can find an acoustic that is set up fairly well and playable, then I think you hit that budget point and it's good. You know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I think one thing that you got more of at Summer NAMM than I did, because we were really only at NAMM for one day, uh, like a day and a half,
Hmm.
but we were so much in like podcaster mode. Like we were just talking to people that we knew through the podcast and people that we wanted to talk to get videos and whatever. And I kind of never took any time to just like walk around and see the things that, just from like the standpoint of just a consumer or whatever, or just like, a hobbyist player like I am.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
I want to do more of that next year at NAMM.
yeah. I think, and I feel a little guilty about this, but like the first day I was there, like I just kind of walked the floor back and forth several times, and I was either hanging out like with Ryan
Uh-huh.
or kind of just going my own way a little bit. And then Anthony came the second day, but Anthony from Sinusoid.
Uh-huh.
And
Shout out to Sinusoid.
shout out to Sinusoid. Hey, you know what? They were really gracious and let me stay at their Airbnb.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, that really helped offset the cost a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
So big shout out to Andy and Anthony for
Yeah.
allowing me to do that. Yeah, I would say that I was impressed and a little overwhelmed by, here I am with this media pass. And so I feel like I have to do something, that
Yeah,
covers
like
now.
totally.
And, I'm walking around with this iPhone rig with like an iRig like plugged into it with like I'm
Yeah.
using like the Sony handheld recorder as the preamp for my microphone. And I'm shuffling around and it's like, the adapters are falling apart while I'm trying to,
Yeah, yeah.
and so anyways, it was very hard to record that way. And I'm watching like some of these guys like Sweetwater and Premier Guitar like walking around with, huge cameras on tripods and
Yeah, yeah.
wireless microphones going to it, and I was just like, yeah, I
Well, and it's a weird thing because like you know and not to like not to minimize your experience,
hmm
but let's be honest, both of us when we went to NAMM and when you went to NAMM, there's a certain aspect of it that's like I don't deserve to be here type of thing, you know.
absolutely,
And
yeah,
so, and so the people that know you, might see your badge and see that it says media badge and either think nothing of it because they know that you have a podcast, or they'll kind of laugh and be like, "Oh, you're media now," or whatever. But like the people who don't know you, they don't know that like you're this new guy who doesn't really take it all that seriously, but is trying to take it more. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't know that you're kind of there not as a joke, but that you're certainly not on the level of any of the other big media outlets.
yeah, yeah,
So that was like a weird thing for me because we would kind of act like it was a joke a lot of times, but you could tell that like people they don't know that it's a joke because our badge just says a name of a media outlet that they don't recognize, which is true for most of the media outlets probably, and then it says media on it, and so they they
yeah.
don't know
That's
we
like
started
I
off
had a
as this.
guy approach me. He kind of yelled out my name. He saw it on my badge. I hadn't met him before, and he
Uh,
had like this up and coming product. It was like a wireless mouse that like was on the floor. It was
uh-huh.
like a pedal, and so it's supposed to like control things on your computer, help you play music.
Oh,
And
like
he
you
grabbed
could use it to like trigger something in Guitar Pro or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so he grabbed me and was, giving me the spill, and I was like, "Well, hey, let me catch this on my iPhone." And so he was gracious and gave me the spill and everything, and I said like, "Well, I'm going to email you this YouTube video." And it was funny
Yeah,
because like the shot, like he kept like, moving in and out of the shot, and the video work was horrible. And
yeah, yeah.
and I was like, yeah, if I'm gonna do this, if I'm gonna try to actually shoot videos, I'm gonna have to do something different next time. But it's kind of like, what do you expect? Like I'm a podcaster, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
But
that.
it's a weird thing because you realize that okay, we're here, like on the scale of media outlets, we're sort of at the bottom of the totem
Mm-hmm.
pole,
Mm-hmm.
or the top of the totem pole. Shout out to Stuff You Should Know. I don't know if you've ever listened to Stuff You Should Know, but they had a they talked about how totem poles actually the most important people are at the bottom. But at any rate, um, but then those same people also exist on the vendor side. So like the same feeling
Absolutely.
that you're feeling of like I don't really belong here. There are some vendors who feel that way, and they're like they want they want to like talk to you and try to pitch their stuff to you, even though you don't have that much reach because it's like, well, they have no reach, so they're it's kind of an interesting thing to see that.
Yeah, but you know what? And this is the thing that was I picked up on is Ryan Burt from 60 Cycle. He's been going for, I think he told me, 3 years now. This is his first Summer now,
Yeah,
but he's
yeah.
he's he's a recognizable face now with a lot of the builders.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And the thing about that is that I literally saw people walk up to him like builders and say thank you for covering my product, like
Yeah,
I'm getting feedback.
like he's a legitimate, like I hate the term tastemaker or influencer because that's just because I those words are lame, but like that's he legitimately is that. Like a lot of people make buying decisions based on the stuff that he covers or what he chooses to talk about, or what he and Steve choose to talk about on the podcast or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and so I can see where podcasting does carry a bit of influence, or has the potential to.
And even our podcast, like uh, we don't pretend to have anywhere near the reach that 60 Cycle Hum or Guitar Nerds or Tone Mob or something have, but um, I know a lot of people have bought like Pelotars because they hear us talking about them all the time, or like there's some level of influence, especially when it's a tight knit community like your group or like the Gear Slum or whatever. There's you almost put more stock in something that someone says when you feel like you're part of a smaller community.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. But I could tell you the coolest thing that happened at NAMM for me was getting to meet some of the other people that I've interacted with in the slum and 60 cycle home. I got to meet some guys like Scott Hamilton and Mark Schwartz and got to meet Jonathan Michael Diaz and Chris Carter and his wife and it just people that it's kind of like all your friends are at NAMM, so it's a good place to go, and
it's super cool to meet. Yeah, especially like Phil and Aaron, I talked to so much that it wasn't that unusual. But yeah, when you meet people that you've only ever interacted with in text on Facebook, it's really fun,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the beauty of it may be like if I make NAMM a habit, it's like I imagine if I went again, that it would be even much easier to kind of pick up where you left off and
totally, yeah.
You kind of like reestablishing that contact with all these people,
And
builders, vendors, whoever.
I can't remember who said it. I think it was Aaron, but after like the taco party that we went to at NAMM, he was like, next year we're not going to be like super well known, but we're not going to be the new guys anymore. We're not going to be the rookies, And that was kind of a crazy thing to think about, that like, sure, not everyone's going to like walk up to us and recognize us, but a couple people might, and it won't be our first time,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's like a little bit of a stigma with, like the new guy. It's like, will he ever be back? Cause I'm sure people who've been there several years, they see people just come and go, but if they see you again, maybe might take you a little bit more seriously.
And especially with podcasting, because I think, and I talked to Blake for the Tone Mob, and we talked a little bit about how like this group, and maybe I talked about it with you the last time we recorded, that's lost to the ether. Like a lot of people in our group are gear fans, but it's like the subset of gear fans who are also podcast fans, And so it's like you go to NAMM and it's like this weird, it's almost like we're having like our own mini Comic-Con or like nerd convention, and so yeah, you get people who are just fans of podcasts, and podcasters especially are the same way, where like you were saying, you don't know if they'll be back again. Like podcasts, if you're a podcast fan and you listen to a lot of podcasts, that a lot of them are kind of a flash in the pan and then they go away, after, I'd love to see some stats on how many podcasts stop after 6 months or after a year or whatever, but it's pretty easy to look around and think like, yeah, a lot of these people won't be back next year,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just the reality of how fast paced and ever changing the gear community is, I mean, there's going to be builders that probably won't be back. You just never know. There's like a rise and fall of companies and.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And there is like people, I know there was that article that was written that I don't put all that much stock in, but I think there is about how the electric guitar is dying. But I think there is a certain level of sort of the boutique guitar market that's kind of a bubble that's bursting a little bit, like I don't know that there's. Are you still there?
Yes.
Oh. We didn't lose our recording, did we?
No, we did.
Okay, good. But I think like there's, and maybe this is like a pessimistic view, but I don't know that there's room. There's certainly not room for a ton of builders to make their entire living off of building guitars. There's always going to be room for builders who can find a niche in a market and serve that niche. But I don't know that I don't think there's a lot of room for a lot of other like Josh Scotts or I don't know
Yeah.
Doug Cowers or whatever it might be.
Yeah. You know, I found it interesting. We were talking, me and Ryan were standing there, and he was talking to some guy at a company, and he was talking about how back, he was like about our age, but had been going to NAMM for 15 years, had been in the industry making pedals.
Uh huh.
And he was saying how back then, like, there were cliques and people were, you know, like, like this pedal maker was jealous of this pedal maker.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were all wanting each other's business, the sales. And
Uh huh.
so he said that now there's like so many of these guys. Like you've got JHS and Walrus and Copper Sound and, all of these companies popping up. And it's kind of like, now it's like, there's actually more room and the market's bigger there than it ever was.
Yeah.
And so he was saying, it's like, and I heard Grant from Bigger
Bigger
NYC.
NYC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was saying in one of the interviews I was listening to that you don't expect people to have like a pedal board full of one brand of pedal.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 years ago, like you'd see somebody with like all Boss pedals or something.
Or like TC. That was something you saw a lot like 5 years ago. Was like somebody had every TC
Yeah,
pedal. You
yeah.
know.
It's just not, that's not normal. And so, like, even Grant, his booth was like just a conglomeration of everybody's boutique pedals, and he just had several boards set up with all kind of different routing and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And that was his booth, was kind of like a boutique pedal booth.
I like that. Like, I don't know. It's a cool. Like, why not?
Yeah, and it was like, he's local, so he can be there, and people can mail in their pedals, and not have to be at NAMM, and it was a
Like,
really cool concept.
I've been watching a lot of demos on the MS3. And Boss has been putting out a lot of stuff lately. They put out, the MD and the RV500s, which are kind of similar, kind of in scope to the big box Strymon pedals, um, and it's funny because you'll see comments about like, oh, well, of course they had to use a Katana for this demo or a Waza amp or some other
Mm-hmm.
Boss amp and Boss pedals and Boss everything, and it's like, yeah, on one hand I get it, and especially Boss isn't the best example because they make everything, and so it's easy for them. But like, if you go to the Earthquaker booth, like, why should every pedal on there be an Earthquaker pedal? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I don't know, and maybe there is a lot of this, but it's not like if someone buys a pedal from another builder, it's taking money away from a sale you would have gotten or something like that.
Right, right. No,
So that's cool.
yeah, and yeah, let's see what else. I'm trying to think real quick. All the stuff. Classic Audio had a really cool pedal with those wheel pedals, like this big. It was like a knob that was like a roto wheel,
Uh huh.
and you could like kick it with your foot, and it had, like controlled like the the most important perimeter on that pedal. So like they had a volume pedal that was like that. They had a
Uh
drive
huh.
pedal that like turned up and down the gain. They had one that was like a pitch shifter,
Uh huh.
like an octave pedal, and then they had
That's cool.
one that they had one that their delay was really cool because when you went up and down with it, like it did that weird like warble thing that like analog delays do.
Yeah, the kind of spaceship noise.
Yeah, and they had one that was like a regular reverb, and then they had like a shimmer verb one. I don't think it's released yet, but
Yeah.
the guy with that was super nice, and that was such a cool concept. And I told him, I said, I've always felt like it'd be cool to have a pedal board with like an expression or a volume pedal for each pedal
Yeah, yeah.
to just on the fly be able to do like interesting stuff. I was like, what you've done in your pedal is you've made that kind of like available.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of like and it's funny because I think the more we get into, okay, you have these insane like big box Strymon pedals that have a million presets and they're like infinitely programmable.
Hmm.
And then you get into things like, oh, I want to be able to control all this crazy stuff with an expression pedal, depending on what I'm doing at that second. And it's like all of those things start to point towards something like a Helix or, some other kind of multi effects unit of like,
Right.
yeah, that's what we all actually want. It's just that 10 years ago when we tried them, they all sounded like garbage because all the D to A and A to D converters sucked.
Right. No, I actually did play an MS3 that was sitting at
Oh,
the
cool.
boss booth, and
Yeah.
I was impressed with the sounds that were coming out of it. Of course, I had absolutely no idea without spending. I didn't get to spend any time really with it. What all the parameters did and how to dial in a
Uh-huh.
sound, but whatever the presets were, it had some really good, sounds, high quality
Yeah, yeah.
sounds.
I've liked it so far. I think, one of the big benefits to me is just the usability. Um, I knew the sounds would be good enough, especially because I don't know. For me, like I am sort of the limiting factor with how good I sound when I play guitar. More so than my gear probably. Um, but I haven't dug into a ton of like really fine tuning on a lot of the sounds because I've been going through. I have a gig in a couple weeks, and so I'm going through like just setting up patches for all the songs
Okay.
and stuff like that, which is really simple and is a ton of fun, and it's nice. Like when I'll go practice with my band, and then as I'm playing a song, I'll tweak and stuff like that. So then at the end of the song, I can just save it, and then it's just saved, and I know I can get to where I was last time, next time I play it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been really happy with it, but I don't necessarily. I wouldn't say that it stands up to every other super expensive pedal sound wise.
Right. Right. I could
Maybe it does.
I could see it being a useful tool, and it's kind of like I see a market for if I'm gonna drop any kind of like considerable money on something. Like I want it to be able to do more than be like a one trick pony, and I think that's what it's got going for it. Like it can do a couple different things.
Yeah, like it's a pretty full featured multi effects unit, and that's part of why I wanted it because I wanted to like dig in with a bunch of different kinds of delay, for example, just because I've never used delay pedals much and I don't really like them, but
Uh
I
huh.
think it's mostly because I don't know how to use them, and so this gives me the chance to use a bunch of different kinds. But then it's also like a really full featured MIDI controller, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
so it kind of has, yeah, it checks a lot of boxes for sure. And if you want all of those features, uh, then the price point is really good.
Right. Right. Let's see. Other honorable mentions there. The Boss Katana. I played the the new like little lunchbox like battery
Uh huh.
powered one. I don't know what the
Yeah,
name of it is.
I think it's just Katana Mini.
Yeah, Katana Mini, and it was it kind of stood up on its own. I mean, I wouldn't say I could go play a gig with it, but it for just a small bedroom amp, it had a lot going on for it. Now, Ryan made a good point, and he said, if you buy like the $200 one, you can scale it down to the wattage that you would need for like a bedroom amp.
Yeah,
So that
totally.
might be the better option.
And I'll do that a lot, especially so that I have the $200 Katana,
Hmm.
which is a 50 watt, and it's a 1x12. And I've used that the last couple times I've jammed at work on bass. So it has an acoustic guitar setting. So I'll put it on the acoustic setting and turn the volume all the way up, and then just set my volume using the gain scaling, or the sorry, like the output,
Hmm.
like wattage scaling. I don't know why I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of, but at any rate, and it works really well for that. And I've been really, yeah, I still really like that amp. You know, I don't. It would never replace the deluxe reverb as my main amp, but it's definitely worth $200. You know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just to go like pick up something and go jam real quick instead of bringing like your pedal board and all this kind of stuff. I could see
Totally.
it
Yeah.
having a lot of merit there.
Yeah.
Dylan McCurchie shot a video of some guy playing, and he was playing through a katana, and it sounded amazing in the video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was blown away. I was like, yeah, I mean that sounds like he's playing just any of the amps sitting in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
So yeah, I got to meet Dylan. That was cool, and
Yeah.
he had one of his guitars at the Rich Light booth.
Does it have a rich light fretboard or
Yeah, had a
something?
Rich Light fretboard. I think he does a lot of business with them,
Okay.
and he had one of his guitars there, and got
Yeah,
to play it.
I have a Midtown Custom at Gibson that has a rich light fretboard, and I
Oh,
like it
okay.
a lot.
Yeah, it felt good. It did. And he had a good setup on it, and his pickup sounded really good. So yeah, I enjoyed playing it. It was just like a
What was
telly.
it?
It was like a telly style.
Was it purple?
No, it was white with like
Okay.
and then it had like a Bigsby on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a good playing guitar, and I had a lot of fun playing it, and getting to check that out. And then
That's cool.
some of the other guitars. Let's see. I went and checked out Doug's guitars at the boutique guitar booth. He brought
Uh-huh.
like three. Well, he brought two. One got damaged. Well, he brought three. One of them got damaged on the way there.
Oh, serious?
Yeah, like something happened to the neck in shipping, and like he's like couldn't use it. And
What was it?
it was a one of his Banshees.
Which is like the Firebird shape?
Yeah, and so the
Dang.
first day I was there, he just had like the Titan and the Super Chief.
Okay. And what's the Super Chief like?
That's like his semi hollow body.
But it's like big, right? Is that the one that's like?
Yeah, it's kind of big, but it's really light and thin.
Oh, it is. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not the one I'm thinking of then.
yeah. Might be thinking the Starliner. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, maybe so. And you sort of fell in love with Cower guitars when you went to Cowerfest, right?
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I became a fanboy,
Yeah.
and it was even so much more fun, like getting to see his guitars again and getting to hang out with Doug, and of
Yeah,
course
yeah, I
Doug
bet.
was just amazing. He super nice, and so
And doesn't it make you think like, man, this he's like an actual legitimate amazing luthier, and why is he even spending any time talking to me?
I don't get it at all, but he was so gracious and nice, and it was
Yeah,
funny. I
right.
was I was doing one of my little videos, like I was describing earlier, with my iPhone on a
Yeah.
selfie stick, and like you could see on the video I did, like I was fumbling around with wires in my hand, and Doug just like bust out laughing at me. I
It's
was like,
awesome.
yeah, I mean, but he, it was funny, and
Oh yeah, totally. He
it,
wasn't like laughing at you.
yeah, it was just funny, and you know, I, and so he had. But what was cool, he had some friends, I guess, in Nashville who actually own Cowers that like brought him on to NAMM. So like by the second day, there was actually like a Banshee that showed up.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that they
Yeah,
just kind of like donated to the cause
yeah.
for the day.
And then there was a pedal. I think it was Creation. The Creation booth. They had a Super Chief like that showed up too,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
and it was over there. And I got to talk to the guys at Creation. I met John Snyder, which that name like really rang a bell, and I was like, I know I've interacted with this guy on the Hum or the Slum or wherever,
Yeah.
and it was nice to kind of put a face to that name, and
Yeah,
and
totally.
and I didn't know that those were old like Risen amps. I mean, he bought out that company.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he talked about it. We interviewed him on the Gear Slum around the time of because he got a cease and desist from Pedal Train, um, to he basically had to modify his design
Oh
in
wow.
some way to sort of avoid their patent. Um, but he mentioned that as well, that they had bought out Risen and kind of, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more of that, because there's a lot of in the boutique market. There's a lot of people who are like amazing craftsmen,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not very good at the business side of things. And if somebody could sort of take up that side of things, they could be really successful.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if, and maybe that kind of stuff already happens and we just don't see it because it's sort of behind the scenes, I guess. But um, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, and it's kind of clever how they did that, and that's a good. They're taking a good approach. There was a lot of creation amps like going out around the room. Like I think the guys over at Yellow Cake had one. I think I saw some elsewhere.
Yeah, he's pushing those pretty hard.
Mm. Let's see what else honorable. Oh, I got to meet the guy from Sarek Bases. That was cool.
Oh, nice.
And play some of those. And then not too far down was a guy with Swope guitars. Co Schneider messaged me and was like, "Hey, please go check these out. Like I've been seeing them on Instagram. I think they're incredible. Go play them and tell me what you think."
Yeah, yeah.
And so I went over there, and the guy was so gracious. Like it was almost like I cold called him, and I name
Uh-huh.
dropped Co. And and the guy just was like so gracious and like stopped what he was doing and let me play all of his lineup, and
Oh,
told me
that's cool.
about it. And then the next day when I walked by, like he stopped me and was like, "Hey, tell me about this again." And so he just was really, really, really nice. And
That's cool.
what was cool about his guitars, though, is he makes his own pickups, but like they're not like normal, like Strat or humbucker type pickups. Like he was telling me, like he's got some that are kind of telly voiced, but then he's got some that like are like you would see out of like a 1940s or 50s like pedal steel that are
Oh,
incorporated
that's cool.
into not pedal steel, lap steel,
Yeah, yeah.
like into his design, and just some interesting sounds.
That's awesome. That's kind of why I like. That's one thing I like about Roni. Um, and I've talked about this a bunch lately, but I got another. So I have two Roni guitars
Hmm.
now, and they're kind of. I'm pretty smitten with Roni, especially the necks. But I like the fact that he has unique body styles, but then he uses for most of his guitars, like a lot of times the stock pickups are Roadhouse. I mean, you can kind of get them built with whatever pickups you want, I guess, or you could. And but Roadhouse makes all these Supro reissue pickups. Like they
Okay.
make the pickups that go in Supro reissue guitars, and so they're meant to mimic these old, '60s pickups that were kind of from an era of, uh, there weren't many people ripping off Strat pickups because Strats had only been around for 10 years or whatever. Like
Hmm.
it wasn't a thing yet, and so everyone was kind of just trying new things, and they sound really cool. Like the one I just got has three pickups in it, and they're the Kingston model, which is apparently that was a Supro like model, a guitar model, it's a reissue of those pickups, but they sound they sound different from any other pickups I've ever used, but they're still really cool.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, if I'm gonna get a custom guitar or whatever, why would I just want one that sounds like a Strat?
Yeah,
Like because I could just get a Strat.
I agree with you. You want something just a little bit that you can't get anywhere else, and
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, that's why you're buying the guitar, because it's
mhm.
something you can't get anywhere else.
And that was very much like Swope was just like it nodded at some classic, kind of like Geekwitz. He nods at some classic designs, but he kind of is doing his own thing. too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So, man, all I've done today is talk about NAMM, but
That's fun though. I wish I could go to like it's honestly just geography. You know, you
hmm
mentioned this is the first time that Ryan had been to Summer NAMM, and he's been to NAMM, you know, for 4 years or something. I mean, a
hmm
long time, and he's like a an actual industry professional, not just a hashtag industry professional. Uh, and it's really just a question of geography. But I'd like to. I think I'd in a lot of ways it would be more fun to be at Summer NAMM because it's smaller. You know. Um,
Yeah, I heard several guys, from Otis Amps and just different ones who like this was their first summer NAMM that they had been to, and I heard them say over and over again, "Oh, you know, this is way more fun and relaxed,"
yeah, yeah.
and so,
Like
y-
there are a lot of people at Winter NAMM that I would want to meet and hang out with and stuff like that.
yeah,
But as a show, I think both of them would be that way. But as a show, I think that Summer NAMM would be cool in a lot of ways. You know, cooler than the Winter NAMM.
yeah. Now, I am like I've been eyeing though. I'm like, well, I'm trying to decide, if I'm going to go to Winter now. I'm pretty sure I want to go, and the tickets are so cheap right now. Like if you buy them out that far in advance
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the plane tickets, they're like
yeah,
$200.
yeah. That's not bad.
And I'm just thinking, man, might as well, you know. But so I'd love to see how it is out there, the bigger show, and I think it'd be good to
Oh,
make contact again, with everybody. And but yeah, it was. I would say it was a positive experience. Especially being the newbie and being kind
yeah,
of an
yeah,
outsider.
totally. But now you're not anymore.
That's it. Yeah, and it's like it's not really an excuse to change what I do. I'm
Yeah,
not like I am kind of a guitar podcast, but I'm not. It's kind of like more of a podcast about stories and people's
yeah, yeah.
backstories, and so
It's not like here's the latest pedals that came out this week or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. It's more like, hey, you're doing a cool thing. I want to know about it. Tell me how you
Yeah,
got
yeah,
there.
totally.
So, but
Well, that's awesome.
yeah,
That'd be crazy. That'd be awesome if you came to Winter NAMM.
yeah, I would love, and I was telling somebody about this. I said the only thing is, it's like the slum guys aren't here, and like now I got to go to Winter now so I can see the slum guys.
Man,
And so I
well,
truly missed you guys. I know Aaron messaged me and he was like, "If I sent you a T-shirt, would you get it? Like, are you gonna be there Saturday?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna leave like around lunchtime."
yeah, he thought because our T-shirts came a couple days before Winter NAMM. We're thinking like, man, if we sent one to Clifton, I bet he'd wear it.
Oh, I
He's a
would have rocked it every day. I would have been.
yeah, because it's like such a bright. They're bright red,
Yeah,
you know.
I
It's
would have
like
had
it's
like the hot chicken dust like falling off of it. Wearing it like
yeah, yeah.
2 or 3 days in a row.
The hot chicken dust. Oh man, yeah, that's hilarious.
Did
Yeah,
you
that
see? Did you see the video Ryan made of the hot chicken?
yes, I did. Man, so there was so much stuff coming out that weekend, and I was like, that week it was my son's birthday, and we went camping.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like we went camping the night before, and then we went to the water park the next day. So it was like all these places where you don't really, you're just not really in a situation where you check your phone a lot, you know.
Right, right.
So it was kind of like overload, NAMM content overload.
But yeah, it was a blast, and the food was amazing out there. There was like this taco place that was right across. It was like in the Country Music Hall of Fame building, and I think it was called Baja Sexto,
Okay.
and it was really good tacos and nachos and burritos. But every time we went, like there was one that had like grass. It was like a grasshopper taco, and like Ryan would ask for it and they wouldn't have it.
Uh-huh.
And it was like we began to wonder, like, are you trying to be like all cool and hip and say that you have that?
Yeah, and you don't actually.
Yeah. Because I mean, I think I went there like 2 or 3 times and it just
And they never had it.
never had it.
Geez. Posers.
Now I did eat a okay. This is going to this is a Gear Slum reference.
Okay.
The last day I had a taco bowl like at NAMM, like they have food vendors in there.
Uh-huh.
And it was like stuffed with really good stuff. And it had like a tortilla, like a soft shell tortilla, like on the outer perimeters.
Uh-huh.
And I never ate any of that tortilla. And so was it still a taco if I didn't
I
eat
don't
the
know.
tortilla?
I mean, it was. You just didn't eat the whole
I just
taco,
didn't eat.
you know?
Yeah, I didn't eat it.
Yeah.
It was almost non-essential to the taco bowl.
No, I think it was still essential. But you wouldn't have necessarily mentioned it if you were talking about the taco bowl. You know, you wouldn't have said, "Oh, I had this taco bowl, and it had like meat and a tortilla and cheese."
Yeah, it was definitely there. It was an ingredient, but it wasn't essential to the taste of
It wasn't necessarily worth mentioning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh man, if Aaron listens to this, he's gonna murder one of us.
I will not be getting that T-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, well that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do a podcast with you at Winter NAMM next year.
Yeah, we gotta like walk up in there like and just like make some kind of statement like cross podcasts like all the podcasters and like we own it, like
Yeah,
walk
like
up in there like Premier Guitar or something, like we own the place.
I'll wear my super tight shirt like John Bollinger does.
Yeah, him and one of the other guys that's like big there, like were sitting next to us at the taco place.
Saw that. I saw that picture that you took.
Yeah, and they were really nice. I mean,
yeah, and I've heard that a ton of times because I'll crack jokes about John Bollinger because he is a little bit awkward in the videos, and he always wears these really tight shirts, and his hair is always just like a nightmare. But everyone I've heard, like everything you ever see about him online, is that he's just like the nicest guy ever in your life,
Yeah.
So I feel bad making fun of him. Not enough to not do it, obviously.
Right. Well, I guess it's kind of fun, like when you're the small guy, the little guy, to pick on the big guy, And,
yeah.
But yeah, he was really nice in the. I can't remember the guy's name. He was with him, and he was really friendly, and he overheard us talking about the hot chicken, like wanting to find some, and he told us exactly where we needed to go, and so.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Because he's from, or like he lives in Nashville, doesn't he?
Yeah. I think most of those guys.
They're like based in that. Yeah, because it seems like most of the rig rundowns you see, they'll mention like, oh, we're here at this venue in Nashville or whatever.
Yeah. And
so
yeah, but we gotta come up with something that like makes a statement. Like if we have to wear all Hawaiian shirts or, something like outlandish.
Pajama pants or something.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel comfortable going that far.
We all need to just have hats with mics on the brim.
There you go.
Like Phil does,
Yeah. Yeah. It's something to make a statement. Hey, we're like a syndicate of podcasters, and we're here to make a statement that we're the next wave of journalism in the gear world, and we're here to stay.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm jealous that you got to go.
Yeah, why not? Like it was right there, just a few hours.
It's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, man, for just kind of hanging out with me here tonight.
Yeah, totally. We covered totally different.
This is a completely different episode
last time, but that's better that way. It would have been. It would have been worse if you're just trying to pretend to sound interested in anything I'm saying when you've already heard it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to ask the same questions again.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. But hey,
Well, no, this was great, man.
yeah, it was fun catching up, and you know, I I I almost felt a little obligated to cover NAMM today because I got an email from like the NAMM people asking me to turn in my coverage,
Uh huh.
and so I sent them some YouTube links of my terrible videos, and
Uh
then
huh.
like, and then I said, and I'll be talking about it on my podcast this week. So,
Oh, nice.
so, so I
So
highly doubt that they will
you're
listen
doing
to it. I'm
you're
doing my.
doing your diligence.
That's it. I'm doing what I said I would do.
Oh man. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Talk to you later.
All right. See you later, Clifton.
All right. Bye.